morning, everyone. Sue Carter here again with another community chat. And look who I'm with today. Here with John Brandman. So I'll be talking to John about his connections, the history of New Horizons, the Shire band, and his musical history. So good morning, John.
Good morning, Sue. Thanks for coming all the way down to Stanwell Park.
Well, it's been a lovely drive. It's been a country run for me, so I've enjoyed it very much. So without my asking lots of questions, the obvious questions, give me a little bit of background about the Shire New Horizons band.
Yeah. All right, so breaking the normal format of your questions, which I understand works really well for most circumstances, I thought it would be an opportunity to lay down a little bit of the history of where the New Horizons band came from. For those who don't know, some of them will have heard this before, but presumably this is there for posterity now. So I grew up involved in music, whether I wanted to or not. Life's one of these things that happens when you're making other plans.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my mother had me plan to be an agronomist.
Oh.
Whatever that is, okay? So I went to an agricultural high school and all that, and one day in the early teens I was weeding the backyard and I apparently pulled out all the tomato plants thinking they were weeds, and so she quickly got over that idea that was for me. But I did grow up with a music studio running in the front 3 rooms of our house at home at Maroubra. So I went to bed every night from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night listening to accordion tunes of various things, and then there was guitar and piano and things. So sort of music was sort of all around me, whether I wanted it to be or not.
Right.
And as I progressed through my teenage years, I became very enchanted with one occasion where I was meant to go and see a band at the Musicians Club in Redfern, as it was, and I can't even remember what that band was, but it turned out that band didn't make it, and as a fill-in band they had their first rehearsal of the Daley Wilson Big Band.
Oh no! Oh,
so I was
wonderful.
in there, at the age of 16, quite illegally and stuff. I had a bit of hair on my face, so I managed to get through, and I got to see them perform there at the Musicians Club at that age, and from that point I was absolutely hooked. Particularly on big band music.
Right.
Jazz, yes, but big band music as a niche is something that's completely taken my interest, and I used to follow the Daley Wilson round as soon as I could drive when they were performing in the various clubs around Sydney, usually weeknights, because these guys didn't make much money out of playing in that band. This was sort of just their filling gig while they were practicing. And I more or less became a groupie for that group as they ran around. So many memorable times with that, particularly when they had Kerry Biddle singing with them.
Saw them all in Canberra, Kerry and Daley Wilson, just stunning.
And I had the highest respect for the band. I thought they were fantastic, and they were one of the best things that happened in Australian music. And I was fortunate enough to actually hear them play at the Hordern Pavilion at a concert. It was about the end of the year. It was about beginning of November one year. Don't tell me what year. And I thought, this is fantastic. I never get to hear anything better. About 3 weeks later, the Buddy Rich Band came into town. Sadly, Buddy Rich has now passed away, and I got to hear them. And Daley Wilson Band played on the Hordern Pavilion. It was a big arena with microphones and all the normal sound reinforcement you expect. But a Rich Band got in there, they had none of that.
Oh.
Only the bass guitar and keyboard actually had amplification. They blew their first note and I hit the back wall. It was just like being hit by a rock. So it completely reopened my eyes, further, and that I was just, as you go through life, you think it's just so good that you get to see these things and do them when you can, because you never know what's around the corner. So this guy passed away way too early. I'll go on to another story relating to big band later, but so it was the fascination with band and playing that sort of, I got involved in music. My parents had a music shop in Rockdale, and I worked there again through high school and in early years of university, which is where I met Carol. And when my parents retired from their business at Rockdale, Carol and I looked at starting just some teaching just to get some income out at Engadine, and that was in 1980. So we just started with two rooms I think at the time,
Wow.
just teaching piano and drums and guitar I was doing at the time. And we had a third guy who came and joined us at the time called Paul Wiseman. So the three of us just teaching, and that's all we were ever going to do. Carol got a position part-time teaching at a couple of high schools and said, look, I can't get guitar strings anywhere. And from my previous knowledge, I said, oh, I know where to get guitar strings, and basically that's where the shop grew from. So throughout the time at Engadine, there's obviously lots of experiences and lots of things that happened, but one of the things that we did get heavily involved on was band programs in schools, particularly the schools that didn't have teachers capable of teaching music. They invited us in to say, look, can we teach our band? So, the band program for schools, which many people would be familiar with, developed. But as that went through, I could see after about 10 years of that, there was a gaping need for something for adults along the same line. There's so many adults that want to do the same as kids. We've always wanted to play, we haven't had the opportunity, we play at home, but we've never had a band to play in. And it was sort of floating around the back of our brain as to how could you structure it, how could you make it work, and it couldn't quite gel together as to how you could get that infrastructure to work. Okay, so slot forward a few years, and Jenny and Ralph, our very good friends, who we do quite a deal of travelling with, got us very much into snorkelling. I'd snorkeled a fair bit as a child, but as life went on, we got more and more into it. Jenny was obviously very into it, and Jenny and Ralph came up with the concept of going to swim with the whales in Tonga.
Oh.
And we thought, yep, we're in for that. Okay, so it was one of those bizarre things, because we flew to the main island of Tonga, which is remote enough as it is, and then we flew to an even smaller island. We took a smaller plane to another small island, and then got picked up by the world's smallest boat that took about 3 people to this very, very small island, and that was the place, the resort, in inverted commas, that we stayed at, and it was the base for going to swim with the whales, which was fantastic, another story altogether. However, the interesting side of that story, I thought, was the fact that the lady who was running this resort was a lady called Patty. Now, the resort had 6 farleys, which, typical wooden structure with mosquito nets over the top, because the island had lots of fallen coconuts, so there was mosquitoes everywhere, so you certainly needed the mosquito nets. Anyway, Paddy also offered to give massage, which is why there's one of the side things to do. So we got to talking one day when we were getting a massage. Why wouldn't you? And she was relating to the fact that she only actually started this resort because at the age of 70, she separated from her husband amicably. He wanted to stay at home and do things, and she wanted to travel and do things. So she made her way. They lived on the east coast of the States. She went to the west coast, and Carol, stop telling me to go faster, because this is a really good story and I'm going to stick with it. She went out the west coast and decided to be a crew on offshore sailing boat.
Wow.
She'd never sailed before. She'd never been offshore. I thought gutsy at the age of 70 to do that. Anyway, she said the first day she lost sight of land. When they went there, she panicked. The second day, she never wanted to see land again. She said this was the most fantastic thing. So she ended up being crew on boats that travelled right around the Pacific. Went around the Pacific, Bali, all those places where she happened to have seen these farleys, and went past this island in Tonga one day, and after a couple of years of doing this, and said, that'd be a nice place for a resort. So she decided to get a lease from the king for this little piece of land, and she decided to put a resort. She didn't know it had no water, it had no electricity, it had nothing basically.
Hadn't done research.
So she went to Bali and bought 6 of these farleys, had them brought over and put up by some of the local indigenous people there to make a structure. One larger one that was a food hall for us. Power ran for 3 hours a day on a generator just to keep the fridge cold enough to keep meat for a day or two. But it was absolutely idyllic. If you wanted to be in the middle of nowhere doing nothing, with nothing, it was the place to be. Anyway, Paddy's giving this massage and saying, what do you do? And da-da-da. Oh, I'm involved in music and things. Oh yeah, my husband's also involved in music. And so we were talking about things, and somehow or another the subject of bands and adults came up. And she said, oh yeah, I think he's got an involvement in something like that. So I said, no, interesting. That was the end of it.
Right.
3 weeks later, we get home and we get an email from Professor Roy Ernst, actually Emeritus Professor Roy Ernst, so he was sort of semi-retiring, and basically saying he'd started a program in the States because he was about to retire. He saw that sort of need for adults to get involved, and how could he do it. So he'd started this program called New Horizons. Invited to come over and have a look and see what they were doing there.
Wow.
So we went to 3 different bands actually in New York State and saw how they were doing. And the thing that was remarkable is how exactly the same they were to what we have here.
Right.
You've got the same people who are nervous about wanting to start, don't think they can do it, are stimulated and excited when they actually achieve something and get there. And it was just an eye-opener for us, and so we thought, well, at least now we've got the model and a structure for how it can work, and so they gave us some assistance in sort of saying, well, if you want to put this together, this is what you need to do. We came back to Sydney, and it took about 2 years, a lot of talking with Jenny and Ralph, Noel and Sue Ann, a couple of other people saying, look, you know, how can we make this work? Because we were trying to find a venue. That was the hardest thing. The churches were in the States are on a different level to what we have here in terms of one of the ones we went to had breakout rooms, and you had a flute choir going in one room and a piccolo choir and a tuba choir, and then they had sound hearing loops in the main auditorium, and you know, all that sort of thing. We've tried to get a venue here, but every time we've gone into the church, they said, yes, you've got a space, but you'd have to take everything away. And as you know, with the band, there's so much infrastructure with percussion equipment and stands and having appropriate chairs and all that. So we said, look, we really need to find somewhere we can have that permanent. So in the discussions with the Southern Brass and being able to use their facility, that really opened the door for us to be able to have it. So I think we started in August 2014, and it was about 6 people who started, I think. And
so let me see. You'd have had Ralph, Jenny, John.
Actually,
Carol.
no, Ralph not at the time. Ralph was working at the powerhouse. He wasn't there.
Right.
So it was a very limited number of people. And again, we didn't know whether it would have any legs, whether it would have enough extension, you know, how we're going to reach that audience of people. Anyway, you can see where it's gone from there.
Absolutely.
But the background coming from this remote connection in the back of Tonga,
story.
is quite remarkable.
It's another one of those doors open.
One of those doors open,
yes,
absolutely.
You just step right through it.
So it sort of went on there. I think the thing that to me is remarkable about New Horizons is just how everybody inputs to it. There's just so many people in the background doing things. I sort of feel a bit guilty trying to mention some names because the people I'm going to forget, but like Ralph does so much work with the band library and getting copies and making sure that's all there. Ashley, I don't think we need to tell anyone how much he does for the place. Rob's doing things all the time. He's doing grant applications, as Belinda has done and for us. You know, you doing all of this. There are just so many people that are running around doing and contributing, and I think that's what makes it really work. And if someone's got a problem with a note, they're not necessarily going to Jenny each time to ask, they're asking the person next to them. So it's like very much a self-help group.
It's like a family. I think of it as a family.
Yeah, and
it filters down from the top. I think only talking with Lisa yesterday that you people are open and welcome and supportive. And genuine. It's not as if, you know, you're in there for the right reasons.
It's one of the best things we've ever been involved in. I think I'll say that on behalf of Carol as well, because I said just the friends that you've met through that, and just to see the way the structure is, and it just offers so much to such a wide variety of people. You know, I think that's.
And we would agree.
A bit on that.
You're obviously hoping that's the situation, but no, we as members would certainly agree with that.
Well, you know, it's just nice to see that it's grown to where it has. Lord knows where it's going to be in a couple of years' time. You know, I think Noel has this concept of pulling the building down and building a multi-storey complex.
Really?
But that's another
have
story.
The flute floor, the trumpet floor, the trombone floor.
So
I'm amazed that there's only one in Australia. There was one in Melbourne. I
think that's true, and I did hear through the New Horizons people that someone else was contemplating starting, but knowing the difficulty in getting the venue, that seems to be the major problem. I'm sure there would be demand, whatever area you set that up in. but getting in the right place, because I said traditionally you would have used a school, but of course you can't use a school during the daytime.
Yes.
So it becomes a bit of an issue. So, we've had some fantastic times, fantastic characters. I think most of us, or a lot of us, will remember Tonya there, who joined us, I think, at the age of 89
Oh,
on
the
drums.
drumming, yes, before my time.
And she was the one who dressed up in the full Santa Claus outfit to play drums down there, and it must have been so hot that day. Santa Claus outfits in Australia in summer, it's just a silly idea in the first place. But
people coming from such distances. I mean, you've got folk coming from Roseville, from Parramatta, down from Wollongong.
Yeah.
They're keen to get there.
It shows that that whatever it offers, it must be enough to draw those people into it. And I think, I have to say without a doubt, a lot of that goes back to Jenny. When we did originally start looking at that band, trying to get things underway, we knew it had to be fun. We knew it had to be educational. It had to provide that stimulus as well. And the best person I could possibly think of to do that, the best person I've ever seen doing that combination is Jenny, without Joe coming along in later days, and Theo in the earlier days has contributed to that as we sort of extended on. But in the early days, Jenny was the model under which we said, if this is going to work, that's what it's got to be. It's got to be fun. If it's not going to be fun, you're not going to get people coming there to be
velvet glove
and done all that sort of thing. So. And, I also, the other day, I was just clearing out some music some practice music I had, and I realised how far the band has come in about 3 years, from all these level 1 charts now that we're looking at level 2, 2.5, the level 3 charts. And I honestly didn't think the band was necessarily going to be at that level because, who's got the time to practice? You're adults. But it turns out as adults, there's some very keen people out there who do.
We can fit it in around all our other obligations.
So the other thing I was going to mention was, because I know one of the questions you ask is, best musical experiences. And one I have to say, leading on from the big band fascination earlier, was the time when we were in New York City and we went to Birdland, the famous jazz restaurant. Now, as apparently is known there, at Birdland on a Friday afternoon at about 6 o'clock, all the musicians who go out to play at the Broadway shows, so you've got the cream of the cream people going out, they come there and they put a big band together. At the time it was called either the Birdland Big Band or the Tommy Igoe Big Band. And they use that as their warm-up gig. So they play about an hour, that's their warm-up, and then they go and do their professional gig. That band was unbelievable. Tommy Igoe was Buddy Rich reincarnated. He was just, I was in tears. I'm in tears now thinking about it. It was just such amazing music. And I've recommended anyone else who goes to New York to see that band playing there. Though sadly, Tommy Igoe's now over on the West Coast. His wife is apparently high executive up in Google. So they moved over to the West Coast. But I'm sure the band was, would still be of that high quality. But it was just such a knockout performance. So it just reminded me how emotional music can be. And if you hear something that is perfection in your mind, whatever genre it is, it just blows you apart. So, that was...
it locks in there as part of your own history then, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's true, and I mean, obviously, Carol and I both like to travel a lot, and, like a lot of the people in the band, it's been a bit of a downer of the last 18 months or so. But, it'll happen again some stage in the future, hopefully. But, I think it's the exposure to that broad range of experiences you can get in travelling that, is what fascinates me, not the concept of going on a luxury cruise doesn't fascinate me so much.
Being locked on a boat.
Going and finding your way through the local markets or the local streets, or having to go to the local shops in the back of Barcelona or somewhere like that is,
or
is
an
such
island.
Or an island.
Yes.
No, that's very true. Anyway, so I think I've taken up probably way too much time with
not at all. And you played as a child, obviously. You had a lot of lessons.
Yeah, my mum, of course, taught me accordion, so I started on accordion. Now, accordion has got a lot of negatives to it, but one positive about it is that the basses on the left-hand side work in a cycle of fifths.
Okay.
So once you know how to play an accordion, you always know your cycle of fifths, and from those who've done the blues and the jazz, that cycle of fifths and key signatures and sharps and flats, it's all based on that cycle of fifths. So it's sort of embedded in brain now from early. It was like learning your times table for me.
So how many instruments do you play?
Well, when I started, I did accordion and piano. That was necessary in our house. And then I quickly moved on to doing some drums and also guitar. We had these teachers coming in every day, and every time they had a half-hour spare, I would jump in and just, pick up a lesson, while they were just sitting there having their coffee. So that's where it sort of started on that sort of group of instruments. And then later on, one of the early trips I did overseas, I studied for a few weeks in the little town of Castelfidardo in Italy, which is basically the home of accordion. That's where accordion reeds are made in the homes by the local villagers and put together and things. So it's that was one of the early things. So I learned to repair accordions in that stage. And when I came back to Australia, I started fixing other instruments.
Right.
Carol's father was an engineer, and when I first started to do brass and wind instruments, I was a little bit hesitant because you often break a thing, apart. Right. He had the skills and ability to actually make virtually any part or anything that came across. So if I got into strife, I knew I had a sort of backstop for it. There. And he was a brass player, so he taught me a lot about brass repairs. So, now for probably the last 30 years, I've been doing brass and wind instruments, and to be able to test them when you're finished, you need to be able to blow them. So my claim to fame, as I say to a lot of people, is I played a lot of instruments really badly. Yes.
But as long as they give you joy, that's
that's so true.
And trombone, of course.
Yeah, the trombone's sort of one of the challenges I've taken on the last, I don't know.
Yes, and don't we need more challenges at this time of life?
Yeah, that's true. No, I enjoy the trombone. It's just a different type of instrument to the other things. So, ideally I'd like to spend about 6 hours a day on each instrument, but I think there's not quite enough hours for each of those
I
things.
think Carol might have a few words about that.
Yes, I know, that's true.
So we know about your favourite musical experience with the band, sort of outside the band. So what about with the band? What are the things that you enjoy mostly there?
I just know everything about the band. I think the rehearsals are fantastic. I think just seeing everyone contribute every week on the Thursday is just fantastic. Obviously, the trips away when you get time to interact a bit closer, one-on-one with people is fantastic. And just to see what a social vehicle the band is. Sometimes I think we're actually just a social club with music played on the side as opposed to the other way around, whichever way it works. And I think it's fantastic to see that. And it's also fantastic to see that when you go out and play in a nursing home, the joy it's giving to those people.
You're giving it back again.
So, it is the full circle of that. So
well, that was proven on Sunday, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With us all together there and family and friends in the audience. Yeah. That was very rewarding.
Remarkably, most of them stayed to the end.
Yes.
That's been... I think that's been the highlight of the New Horizons in Australia. And I said, I would love to get to the stage where we could invite another New Horizons band from Australia or from overseas, at least in part, to come and join us. And if we ever travel overseas, to actually do the same sort of thing. Because I think sitting in with a local band overseas would be a fantastic way to get to meet local people.
We all know the music.
Yes, that's right.
Pretty much. So, I think the wonderful thing for me is too the diversification in the group. When I first came along, it was through one of the clarinet players, Tricia, who's now in England, with school connections there with her granddaughter and my granddaughter. And as I used to wander down to my group one lesson, I'd wander past the small band room, or sometimes our groups playing outside, and watch Jack and the Blue Horizons. So I'd be doing a bit of a dance down the road. I thought, one day I'm going to get into that. So that's the wonderful thing, is that you can start off as a purist, just wanting to play the straight classical music, or else you can diversify with your clever blues start-up band that you had.
Again, another
class
fantastic
was wonderful.
thing. I've played in other jazz ensembles before, and it's always been hard to keep players motivated and keep them interested. New Horizons seems to offer the reverse. Once they join, they rarely leave, and the band's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which is fantastic because the sound is just getting fuller and fuller each time too. Yes. And Jack's done a fantastic job at in his own way, in stimulating and making that, give exposure to a different style and approach to music.
Well, I commend you for that, for the startup group that you did, almost 2 years ago now, isn't it? With the blues, the beginner group. That sort of was a nice transition.
Yeah, well, I think there were some people particularly who sort of said, look, we want to understand a bit more about how is it put together, what is a blue note, where does it come from, and that sort of thing. So some of the people, I'm sure, found it a bit tedious to go through key signatures and that sort of thing, but those who wanted to could at least say, okay, well, now I know how that all works.
It starts making sense.
And we can start to put that together.
Yeah.
So, again, it'd be interesting band to see what it's like in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, well, it's growing and growing, and if we get some money out of it...
even better. those big paying gigs at Bunnings, that's right.
So what about your favourite music, favourite performer? That must be a ridiculous question to ask.
Yeah, well, the big band stuff is certainly it. I mean, so many fantastic experiences. I said, going back to Kerry Bedell in Daly Wilson, she was just phenomenal, but we saw her quite regularly in a small group setting, and it was just exquisite.
She was a powerhouse.
Just exquisite, yeah, she was just exquisite. And she would command a room, and, there would be a room full of people talking, and she wouldn't start to sing until it was dead silent. And then people would not talk because it was just... You hung off every note.
She was very specific, because it was a no smoking environment too for her, wasn't it?
Yep,
in the days when everyone was in there
and she
fagging away.
She died way too young, and that was a very sad day. But it's just a reminder, if you can see it and do it when you can, do it, because you never know what's around the corner.
Absolutely. So what are your greatest challenges? They'd be quite different to ours. Oh, unless finding time to practice is always comes up as the main one.
Carol, she's always a great challenge for me. Got to keep them happy. That's right.
Brass tone.
I think no different to everybody else. I said the trombone's a fantastic instrument, but after playing it for Group 3 and then playing it through the jazz, by the end of that, my lips going... So I wish I had younger lips again. My daughter, who played trumpet and trombone in high school, occasionally comes up and hasn't played either instrument for about 10 years, but she can still get on the instrument and play higher than I can play.
Wow.
And it's just those early muscles.
Don't you hate that?
Those early muscles make such a difference, So, if you've had it at an early age, you take that as an absolute bonus. So, I think it's a work in progress for all of us from that point on.
Well, I mean, that's what we want. It's all about mental health these days, isn't it? With COVID, it hasn't helped at all. But
yes, you can hear the brains ticking away in that room on Thursdays. That's for sure.
Some faster than others, John.
Well, that's okay. We have all rates in there. That's all good. So.
Yes, at least they're ticking, and that's the wonderful thing. So, do you have other interests other than music?
Yeah, sadly, so many. Well, obviously travel is a big one of ours, but we both like to bike ride. I've done some fantastic bike rides in recent years with Jack Petchy, who also likes the bike rides. Right. So he's taking us on tours through Sydney and everywhere, basically, eastern suburbs. And it's been just like being a tourist in your own town when you travel with him. We like to kayak. We've done lots of kayaking. Like a few of the other members in the group do. I know Bob Head likes to do a lot of kayaking, things like that. So who knows, one day we might have a kayaking subset, New Horizons trip out.
There's certainly a cycling group, there are enough of you.
We've been lucky enough to do some multi-day kayaking trips overseas, where you just basically carry your tents and your food and your water on the kayak, and you land on a beach and you put it up, and then you make your way around. So we've done 4 or 5 of those now. And,
wonderful.
It's just a fantastic way to see a country, at ground level, literally.
Yes.
There's been no limit to the things, which is, we love skiing, snow skiing, and we try to keep fit, doing, various other things. That all takes time too,
Yes, but you need those breaks too when you chill down and don't do anything for a while. Just read a book, look out the window.
The library gets hounded a little bit in recent times. Yes, it's been a good thing. And, if the internet doesn't take you down a rabbit hole, you actually get time to do that.
Yes, that's the worst of it. Oh, well, that's been wonderful. So anything to add?
Sorry, the format's a little bit different to what you would normally do, but I thought
that's fine.
we could do that.
Well, it was no good my asking, how did you hear about New Horizons?
No,
Bay
no,
in that
well,
sense.
you know, in a way I did hear about it through this funny little lady in Tonga, Patty. She's got a lot to.
Oh, well, let's all raise a glass to
To
Patty,
Patty, absolutely,
when
yeah.
we're all together again.
And thanks again for doing this. It's just a fantastic thing for the group. I know it did start during COVID times, specifically to keep, you know, the band, you know, in communication, if you like. But I think it's been a fantastic thing to continue outside that, because I think everyone doesn't necessarily get the time. Not everyone gets to go to camp, and you know, there's not that much time to talk to everyone. At least this is an opportunity for people to interface with some of the other members and get a bit more of the background. So.
I've been enjoying it, and especially now with the change in band times. There's no coffee.
No coffee time. No.
Chat times outside. So
We might have to revisit that eventually.
we may have to
indeed, yes. Bring a thermos.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh, look, that's fantastic. Thanks so much, John.
No,
I've really
thanks for coming
enjoyed
down
this
here.
time.
Okay. Ja.
Thank you. See you next time, guys.
You are the breathless hush of evening that lingers on the brink of a lovely song. You are the angel glow that lights a star. You are the dearest things I know, that's what you are. Someday my happy arms will hold you, and someday I know that moment divine when all the things you are mine. Ba-da-da-da-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba